What's up, everyone? Today, we're going to have a look at something known as el Pluscuamperfecto del Indicativo, or past perfect indicative. And so this is building off of our perfect tenses that we've been working on. The first one we did was the present perfect of the indicative, and that meant have and has. The past perfect indicative actually means had, right? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means. And I'm also going to go over the conjugations, of course. And then also in this lesson, what I'd like to introduce are the irregular past participles. And so what's wonderful about those is what's irregular for the past perfect indicative in terms of past participles is irregular for all perfect tenses. And so that's something that is actually pretty cool about all the perfect tenses, and that it shares in common. And so the other thing I wanted to do to finish things off is I wanted to look at 4 sentences I've written here, and I want you all to translate those. And so you're at a point now with the language that you're really able to translate some robust sentences in Spanish. And so we're going to do that at the end of this lesson. But like I said, I want to start out with looking at, let's make sure we can read that. And so I want to look at how to conjugate haber. Again, for all perfect tenses, and I'll probably say this in every video, but for all perfect tenses, haber is the helping verb, also known as the auxiliary verb, and then that's paired with a past participle. Now, the regular past participles are what we keep calling ado and ido. In other words, to make a past participle, you drop the AR, ER, IR, for the regulars at least, and then you add ado for AR and then ido for ER and IR, right? And that's how all regular past participles are created. And so that's also known as el participio pasado in Spanish. And then again, the irregulars will sort of have their own form, and I'm going to talk about that as well. So, but like I said, let me get back to haber, and then we'll make our way over there and look at those irregulars. And so, again, haber being the helping verb or the auxiliary verb is used in all perfect tenses. For the pluscuamperfecto del indicativo, or for the past perfect indicative, it's conjugated in the imperfect tense. And so, while the present perfect indicative is conjugated in the present indicative tense, the past perfect indicative, haber, is conjugated in the imperfect tense. And for those of you all who are familiar with the imperfect tense, you probably already saw that. And so for those of you who didn't catch that, I'm going to tell you right now that yes, haber in the pluscuamperfecto del indicativo is in fact simply conjugated in its imperfect tense. And so that's what gives you that translation had, right? And you'll notice that theme across these examples we're going to look at in a second too. And so, but first I want to pronounce haber in the imperfect tense with you all so you have an understanding as to how it's pronounced. So we have había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, habían, right? And so just so we're clear, I had, you had, he, she, it had, we had, you all had, that's vosotros, they had, right? And so again, let's do that again. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to pause so you can say it after me. Había, habías, había, habíamos, habíais, había, right? And again, that's yo, tú, él, ella, usted, nosotros, vosotros, ustedes, ellos, ellas. Those are the forms. And so, again, that is, as I have written here, all of these are paired with el participio pasado, or the past participle. That's what makes it a perfect tense. In fact, this in the imperfect tense with the past participle is what makes it the past perfect indicative. Again, the present perfect indicative would have this conjugated in the present indicative and paired with the past participle, and that's what would make it the present perfect indicative. And so, again, as we work through these perfect tenses, you'll start to see the fuller picture of how they all work. But like I said, today we're we're honing in on el pluscuamperfecto del indicativo. And so I want to move over to the irregular past participles just to walk through these, look at what their irregular past participles are, and then I'll bring us back to finish with this. And so we have here abrir, morir, absolver, poner, cubrir, decir, romper, escribir, resolver, satisfacer, hacer, ver, y volver. Now, a lot of these actually have prefixes, and I'll highlight a couple of those. And so obviously the prefix will, for example, before I get too carried away, we'll just put oponer here, which means to oppose. So oponer, with its past participle being puesto, it would just become opuesto, right? And so that's how the prefixes would work with these. So let me erase that, and we'll start from the top. So abrir is to open, and so its past participle is abierto, right? Morir means to die. Its past participle is muerto. Absolver means to absolve, and its past participle is absuelto. Poner is to put, and its past participle is puesto. Like I said, if you wanted to add the prefixes that come along with, the root verb poner, we'll put another one up for fun. So componer, which means to compose or put something together, right? That past participle would be compuesto, of course, because componer in and of itself is a verb, and therefore its past participle would have to consider that prefix. And so cubrir means to cover, and its past participle was cubierto. Another example, just sort of building off of that prefix idea, is descubrir. Descubrir means to discover. And so naturally, if you wanted to say discovered, for example, right? I had discovered a cool new class to take at the university, right? I don't know. That's a decent example, I guess. But either way, or we had discovered, or los antropólogos, the anthropologists, habían descubierto ruinas en Honduras. So the anthropologists had discovered ruins in Honduras, for example. Anyways, moving along. Decir means to tell or say. Its past participle is dicho. Romper is to break, and its past participle is roto. I'm going to put a little asterisk right there, and I'm going to put it right here too. Escribir is to write, and its past participle is escrito. Now I want to pause on these two as we run through. Romper and escribir, probably more so escribir than even romper. A common mistake for these two and the other ones, as you're learning that these are irregulars, in fact. For example, escribir, a lot of times a common mistake is to say escribido. And you'll hear people say that. And again, like I said, that's a common mistake. Now, that's wrong. And while people do understand if you said escribido, it's grammatically incorrect. However, just know that its past participle, the proper past participle, is escrito. And it'll take some time, and you'll dial these in. But the cool part to all of them, like I said, is what is irregular here for the past perfect indicative is irregular for all past participles, for all perfect tenses. Well, those past participles that are irregular for all perfect tenses. That was a mouthful. So, all right, moving right along. Resolver becomes resuelto. Satisfacer becomes satisfecho. Hacer becomes hecho. Ver, to see, becomes visto. And by the way, hacer means to make or do. Satisfacer means to satisfy. And resolver means to resolve. Kind of skipped over this. But ver, again, visto. And then volver, last but not least, means to return. And that's vuelto. Now, another fun one is devolver. So while volver really refers to like a person or say an animal or something like that, returning, like volver a casa, to return to the house. Devolver is returning or referring to, say, returning an item. Like you bought something, you didn't like it, you're returning. You could devolver una camiseta, for example, right? And so all that to say, if you were to use that as a past participle, it would be devuelto, right? And so again, that prefix comes right along with it because it in effect is its own verb. So anyways, hopefully that was helpful. And like I said, just to reiterate, what you see here as irregulars are not only irregulars here for the past perfect indicative, but they're irregulars for all the perfect tenses. I think I've said that enough at this point. So let's come on back over here and let's do some translations and call it a day. So I have here, when you arrived, everything had ended. And so here's the thing about this one. We're going to use acabarse, right? So we're actually going to use a verb that has a reflexive pronoun in it as well. So I'll show you how that works. But so when you arrived, so cuando llegaste, right? When you arrived, right? So this is just the use of the preterite, no big deal. Cuando llegaste, todo se había acabado, right? And so this is a good thing to review with you all as well. Pronoun placement with in perfect tenses. Remember, for pronoun placement, and I'm going to write it right here. Pronoun placement, it goes before the conjugated verb, like that, attached to an infinitive, and I'm shorthanding some of this because, again, this is just a quick review. 3, attached to the gerund, right? And that's your ing. And of course, number 4, as you all very well know, is attached to an affirmative command, right? So that's attached to an affirmative command. Now, what are we working with here with these perfect tenses? I'm going to go back to, I'm actually going to use pink or, I don't know, maybe this is almost magenta. So we're going to use it no matter what. So, cuando llegaste, when you arrived, right? We got that. That's no big deal. Todo se había acabado. So notice here, todo is third person singular. So this is agreeing, these are agreeing with one another, right? Third person singular, that's right here. And then we have as I wrote here, indicated here, we have a reflexive pronoun. So the pronoun has to go somewhere, right? And so we're actually, because we have a conjugated verb and then we have the past participle. Now, it does not go here, it does not go here. Because where do we attach? We only attach to an infinitive, to a gerund, and an affirmative command. We do not attach to a past participle, right? And so that's out. We don't put it in between, we know that already. That's out. And so your placement of that pronoun needs to go before the conjugated verb. What's the conjugated verb? Había, right? Which is haber. Hopefully that was helpful. You can always rewind and watch that explanation again if you need to. I'm going to move on. Number 2, I had never seen so many people in the stadium. Yo nunca había visto. Uh-oh, we got an irregular here. So we have seen, which means to see, ver, right? And so there's our irregular. So, yo nunca había visto tantas personas en el estadio, right? Now, if you want to try the last 2 on your own before I get to it, just hit pause, do some work on it, and then unpause, and I'll be working on these with you. So, yo nunca había visto tantas personas en el estadio, right? So, I never had seen, here you go, here's your past perfect indicative. Yo nunca había visto tantas personas en el estadio, in the stadium, right? So, like I said, moving along, for those of you who paused to see if you could do these on your own, awesome. Let's see how well you did. For those of you who are just moving right along with me, that's cool too. So again, I'm going to take this, we're going to call it magenta, pink, magenta, whatever. So they were upset because they had lost the game, right? And so we're going to use estar with a condition, right, in the past. So we're going to go with ellos, right? That's what we're going to use over here. Ellos estaban, right? How you feel and where you are, always use the verb estar. So we got to use estar when we're talking about being upset. So ellos estaban enojados. Some of you may have done enfadados, which is another way of saying upset. That's totally cool too. I opted for enojados. Ellos estaban enojados porque ellos, right? I'm just reiterating that. Habían perdido el partido. El partido, right? And so let's take out our purple marker here. So ellos estaban enojados. Now this is estar with a condition, right? So they were upset, right? And so notice this is plural. Well, this is plural. And then this is agreeing with that, right? When you have a estar and you use it with a condition, you've got to agree in number and gender. And so let's move over to what we're working on today. So habían perdido. Now, again, just to reiterate, we have ellos habían perdido. Now, I recognize that it's ellos, and then this is plural, but all past participles in perfect tenses end with the letter O, irrespective of number and gender. And so that's why you have here, ellos habían perdido el partido. So let's look at the full sentence. Ellos estaban enojados because ellos habían perdido el partido. And habían is coming from right here. That's the one I'm using because it's agreeing with ellos. And so lastly, my friend made soup even though I had asked for sushi, right? So let's do this. Mi amigo hizo sopa, right? Hizo is the use of the preterite for hacer. It's an irregular verb in the preterite. Mi amigo hizo sopa, aunque, that means even though. Notice this is two words, but in Spanish it's one. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Mi amigo hizo sopa, aunque yo había, what's to ask for? You got it. That's pedir, right? And I'm going to write it up here. Pedir. We drop the IR. This is how we deal with regular past participles. We drop the IR, right? In this case, it's an IR. And we're going to add ido. So it becomes pedido, right? And so, mi amigo hizo sopa, aunque yo había pedido sushi. There you go. So, mi amigo hizo sopa, my friend made soup, even though I had asked for sushi. Yo había pedido sushi. And so, this is just some examples of how the past perfect indicative works. And if you notice, the present perfect indicative and the other perfect tenses for that matter are going to sort of follow suit. And what I mean by that is, in much of the same way it works in English, it's going to tend to be a nice, cozy translation. And so that's another fun thing about these perfect tenses.